Greetings my friends and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about a show that I attended last night. So this is a gig review of a band, one of the legendary bands of the UK kind of death metal or extreme metal scene. One of the pioneers, in my opinion, of not just grindcore but just good old death metal into melodic death metal into kind of death and roll. This band has consistently pushed boundaries and chopped and changed and just been a fantastic band overall. A very creative band for the best part of, well over 30 years in fact. And I'm talking about a little band who have crawled out of Merseyside, Liverpool, and I'm talking about the legendary Carcass. Cannot overstate just how much I absolutely love this band. Really, Carcass for me were one of the first really extreme metal bands that I got into. I can't even really remember how, but I think it had something to do with seeing their logo, that old logo. Of course, they used a slightly different logo, more sort of block capitals, for an album, Swan Song, and for Heartwork as well, and I think also for Necroticism as well. So this logo, I think that's so defining. That is just gritty. It looks like it's going to be nasty. If you saw that, it would sum up pretty well the sort of music that you're going to get subjected to when listening to the legendary Carcass. And they are absolutely legendary. They did have a long hiatus between, I think it was about 1995 and 2012. So I think it was around 17 years. After the release of Swan Song, they went on hiatus or split up altogether, and then they came back around 2012 with a absolute stunner of an album entitled Surgical Steel, which is, I don't know if I can say it's my favourite Carcass album. I think they don't have a bad album, but it's certainly a runner. It's certainly a contender for one of my favourite, if not my favourite Carcass album. And I was absolutely thrilled that Carcass announced this quite lengthy UK tour entitled the Bloody Blighty Tour 2023. I think the last time I saw Carcass was actually at the last instalment of the Sonosphere Festival in the UK, and I think that was 2014. So it has been 9 years, nearly 10 years, since I've seen Carcass. Absolutely love these guys. It's just every time they've come around, it's either been the big cities or the bigger venues, which is a little bit more problematic to get to, or a little bit more of a costly venture, I should say, or it's been the festivals, and they're not always a possibility. But as they announced that they were playing at the humble Norwich Waterfront, I booked a ticket the day of release for those tickets. I was not going to miss out. No way in hell. So we've got the legendary Carcass. We also have, or we also had, I should say, another band, an up-and-coming band, and a superb band at that. A band from Portland, Oregon, USA. We had Unto Others. Now, I have actually been following Unto Others for a couple of years now. I did see Unto Others perform, I believe it was last year, at the Waterfront in Norwich again, but in the tiny little upstairs room, a fraction of the size that the main kind of venue or the main sort of stage area is. And that's not really saying much because the Waterfront is a pretty tiny venue anyway. But the room upstairs is even smaller. It was a very thin crowd. But when they performed there, I think it was last April, early last year, they had the presence and performance and the talent of musicians and of a band that is absolutely going places. No doubt at all. This time around, a little over a year later, they have definitely improved. There is definitely an improvement in their performance quality. You can see that trajectory is just going up, absolutely, and they were stunning. Absolutely fantastic last night. But I'll get onto more about that, into more detail in a second. So they're a great band. I've been following them. They've got a couple of albums out because they had a name change from Idle Hands to Unto Others a few years back. They've got technically sort of 2 albums, EPs, bits and pieces. So they've got a good chunk of work to be working off, and they are a band absolutely rising stars. They are prolific because they are always on the road. It seems like they are always doing something, not necessarily just in the UK. They always seem to be touring across the world with someone. I've seen them on lineups with everyone from the likes of Carcass to Behemoth. You know, they're really, really putting in the legwork, and they are an absolutely superb band. Absolutely love Unto Others. Incredible musicians, incredible band. So, as I say, the Norwich Waterfront, we have Carcass, we have Unto Others. There was another band on the bill, Conjurer, who were opening up. Unfortunately, due to the trials and tribulations of life, I wasn't able to get to Norwich quite as early as I wanted to be able to catch them. They're not a band I'm really that familiar with, but I have heard quite a lot about Conjurer. I've heard a lot of good things, so I did want to catch them. It is a shame that I wasn't able to see them, but to be honest, from the 2 bands that I did see, Unto Others and Carcass, I am more than satisfied. And it was an amazing show. From this lengthy UK tour that Carcass and Unto Others and Conjurer, in fact, have been trekking out on recently, covering all those smaller venues, you know, the more intimate shows. They are on absolutely fine form, it seems, and I got the impression that they're really enjoying it. So, we'll go in order of the evening then. Got to the venue, got in. The first band that I saw was then Unto Others, and they were absolutely cracking. They kicked off their set with Heroin, which is the opening track from the only album of theirs that I have, Strength. Now this album came out, if I remind myself, this came out in 2021, so it's been out a couple of years now. As I say, it's the only album of theirs that I have. It's an absolute ripper. I love this. If you're not familiar with Unto Others, they are quite a good mixture of, I would say, sort of goth rock or gothic metal. There's a strong influence of bands such as The Cult or Sisters of Mercy, or for that matter, I guess you could say the very gothic stuff of Paradise Lost. A little bit of that in there. And there's a real strong vibe of traditional heavy metal as well. So that's where I'm coming from. It's more like gothic heavy metal. It's quite dark. They are an absolutely astounding band, no doubt. But it's not necessarily the sort of stuff that I normally gravitate towards. When I see gothic on something, on a band's profile, I don't necessarily think, oh, that's definitely something I need to check out. However, don't be put off by the goth kind of tag or the label, the pigeonhole here, because these guys absolutely rip. Tracks such as Heroin absolutely crushes. It's got a real thrashing riff to it, and in that live setting it sounded great. Right the way across the band, really talented musicians. Their guitarist, sort of lead guitarist, Sebastian, I believe his name is, Sebastian Silva, that guy can absolutely shred with the best of them. He's a fantastic guitarist. He's got a real good stage presence as well. You know, he's doing a crazy solo or an amazing lead, and he's not even looking at the neck of the guitar. He's just shredding away. Really good stuff. As I say, really great musicians. Frontman Gabriel Franco, he's got a very interesting voice. I wouldn't necessarily say that he's one of the greatest singers around, but for this sort of music, he has a great voice. It really does complement the music really well, and he does have a good voice. He's got that kind of like rough edge, but he has got a good clean voice. It's got power, it's got projection to it. And he's also a very good guitarist as well. But as I say, Unto Others are just a great band. They are one to really watch out for. I think I really need to check out some of their other material, not just from Strength, because the tracks that they were playing, absolutely storming stuff. They did play some of my personal highlights from this album, such as Destiny, and they also played When Will God's Work Be Done. Those are brilliant tracks. And if you haven't heard this album, Strength, the most recent full length, I think there's also an EP called Strength 2 out now as well, which, again, I need to check that out. If you haven't heard this, check them out and follow these guys, because they are going places. Mark my words, viewers, mark my words. Unto Others, they are going to be, in a couple of years' time, it's going to be headlining the Forum, or it's going to be headlining the Roundhouse, you know, the bigger London venues, and then before long it's going to be Wembley. Let's face it, Unto Others are going places. Absolute rising stars of the scene. As I say, it's kind of gothic, heavy metal. And live, they're really encapsulating, really good stage presence. They had a good length set as well. I think in total it was about 45 minutes. And they played a real good mix. Some of the songs were more kind of like thrashy and heavy metal. Some of them were, I want to say, a little bit more kind of melancholic from my impressions. I mean, some of these songs maybe they played last time around, but a couple of them I didn't really recognise. That said, it has a kind of familiarity, a familiar kind of feel and presence to their music, and it's really good. So Unto Others, they absolutely delivered an astounding set, and the crowd clearly enjoyed them as well. They got a really good reception, really good response, which is good, because I think Unto Others absolutely deserve it. So then we only had a very brief wait, which I was kind of pleased about, because there's nothing worse than waiting around between sets. And of course it's understandable, it takes time to set up the sound, or get the stage arranged and get all the instruments plugged in, wired up, tuned up, whatever, check all the mics. But it was only 20 minutes. So that to me screams of expert planning and organisation. 20 minutes, close of Unto Others to Carcass coming on stage. Now, as I've already said a couple of times, or really expressed it, I freaking love Carcass. What I really love about Carcass is the fact that they have such a variety. Although they are, and always have been, an extreme metal band, they have such variation, such progression between albums. But they covered their catalogue. They really did span right across the catalogue. Of course, their most recent album, it did get a fair bit of attention. I'm talking about Torn Arteries, which was released in 2021, which I think is an absolutely cracking album, I have to say. I believe it was one of my favourite albums in the review that I did of the best of 2021. It's an absolute stormer of an album. So from this album, they played the second track, Dance of, I don't know if it's Is-Tab or X-Tab, in brackets, Psychopomp and Circumstance, March number 1 in B. Which is a ripper. It's a real melodic death metal with that kind of, I guess it has got that really gritty, filthy kind of putrid sound to it that Carcass are known for. And certainly in a live setting, this material sounds absolutely putrid. It's so good. These guys are, they're used to being on stage. They're used to doing it. They're not newcomers. These guys are veterans, and they deliver a set which kind of reflects that experience, because they nailed it, absolutely crushed it. We had the absolutely astounding Under the Scalpel Blade as well, very early on in the set. We had Kelly's Meat Emporium, which was, I believe it was the second track they performed. And I do believe we also had the Scythe's Remorseless Sling. So we've got a few tracks fairly heavily leaning towards, if you think about it really, heavily leaning towards this album. 4 tracks, really, really promoting it. Absolutely nailed it. Those songs, first time that I've heard those songs in a live setting. It's still fairly recent, of course. It's only a couple of years ago since Torn Arteries came out, and they absolutely crushed it. As I say, I'm pretty sure they played Kelly's Meat Emporium, which is a very oddly titled track. Pretty sure that was the second track, and then Under the Scalpel Blade was maybe the fourth track. So they were heavily representing torn arteries quite early on. That said, they kicked off with the opening track from this little ditty. This is Heartwork. This was originally released in, was it 1993? 1993, and they opened up with Buried Dreams. Now, I absolutely love this album. Again, this is probably a contender for a favourite. Absolutely ripping. It's such a sinister track. It's got an instantly recognisable riff, and Jeff Walker's vocals, instantly definable. He has such a unique and iconic extreme metal vocal. Kind of, it's more like a death shriek or scream. It's not a death growl. It does get a bit growly, but it's like a husky, rough, snarling vocal style. Absolutely brilliant. I love Jeff Walker's vocals. I think he's a fantastic vocalist, and it really, really suits the music, his vocal style. Mention you got Jeff Walker there. You've still got the iconic duo, if you like. You've still got Bill Steer on lead guitars and vocal contributions here and there, and then you've got Jeff Walker bass and vocals. We do have a new guitarist in the band. I'm not sure if it's like an official member status yet or not, following the departure of Ben Ash, who I believe is now working with Strigoi. So you've got those legendary guys. You've also got Ben Wilding still on drums, who's been with the band for a little while now. But what an entrance. What a way to kick off. You've got Buried Dreams. Absolutely cracking stuff. Elsewhere from this album, because I can't quite recall the exact kind of sequence of events with the set list, but you had other such brilliant tracks as This Mortal Coil, which is an absolute legendary track. I'm pretty sure we also had Death Certificate. So you've got a good representation. And I believe we had the title track from Heartwork as well, kind of closing out the main set before the encore. And I think it's understandable that Carcass really did represent Heartwork quite strongly, because this is one of their most renowned albums. I believe it must be one of their biggest successes commercially. It's an absolute ripper. It's a freaking great album. I absolutely love it. And the very fact that they played This Mortal Coil satisfied me right down to the ground, because those riffs are so crunchy and so groovy and so melodic. They are absolutely intoxicating. My neck is aching quite a lot, I have to say, today, after the intense headbanging experience of the evening. And I will mention that I was in quite a good position, gradually working my way forward as people were nipping off to the bar or whatever, I don't know. I was gradually working my way forward, close enough that I was only maybe 2 rows back from the very front in the end, but more on that shortly. What was a really pleasant surprise is quite good representation of this album. So this is Swan Song. So this is the final album that was released in 1995 before the band split. I've recently talked about this on the channel as being an underrated album, because I really do rate this album quite highly. And what was really cool, and Carcass did this a few times throughout the set, is they made things tracks into a bit of a medley, or they threw a few curveballs where they maybe started a riff sequence, or they started a drum pattern that led you to believe that they were going to launch into a track. For example, they opened, or I feel that they were opening up with Tomorrow Belongs to Nobody before launching into something else. Then they were coming back. They started off Keep On Rotting in the Free World, and then there was a bit of a medley. They weren't, direct live performances, exactly to the T that it is on the album. They were mixing things up. They were throwing a few curveballs in there, and it kept things really interesting. It was a real good medley mix as well. But they did represent this album with the absolutely cracking and highly groovy Keep On Rotting in the Free World, and I absolutely love that track. I think that's such a freaking good track. So I'm glad that Swan Song did get a representation. We also did have a representation. We did have some essentials from their second album. This is Symphonies of Sickness. Now, there's a couple of tracks that you could say are, I don't want to say they're the greatest hits, but they are the big hits from Carcass. They have a few tracks that a lot of extreme metal fans know. Even if you're not that familiar with the catalogue of Carcass, certain tracks will stand out because they've been covered numerous times by numerous artists, or they're just generally the most popular. And those tracks would include Ruptured Impurulence, with that absolutely crushing, putrid, groovy riff fest with an intro and just throughout the track. I absolutely freaking love that. And Exhume to Consume, in this instance, was used as essentially like the first track of the encore, where you have vocal contributions or vocal leads from Bill Steer, guitarist. Absolutely love it. Some seriously filthy riffing. Absolutely disgusting. It's the kind of riffs where you feel like you need a shower after being in the presence of that live performance. Disgusting stuff. Disgusting kind of, I don't know what, like death grind, gore death metal. I don't know what the hell you want to pigeonhole it as. Those are just some disgusting riffs. Ruptured Impurulence, probably my favourite track off this album. I know that many people would share that sentiment. And then we've also got Exhume to Consume, a legendary track. But we also had a fair representation from Necroticism. One of, again, probably one of the most popular albums alongside Heartwork. This is a death metal, disgusting old school death metal classic, obligatory Corporal Jigsaw Quandary. We also had Incarnated Solvent Abuse. We also did have Tools of the Trade as well, the title track of an EP, which is, again, it's one of their most popular and renowned tracks with some seriously disgusting riffs. I absolutely love it. Jeff's vocals, it just works. Blast beats out your eyes, you know the good sort of Carcass stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. I love this album. I think this is an absolute putrid, disgusting beast of an album, and it was well represented with some more absolutely essential tracks. And what I really did love is that they closed the set with the title track, or 316L grade Surgical Steel from the Surgical Steel album, which is my favourite track from the Surgical Steel album, and it's just an absolute stunner. It's such a good song. It's got some amazing riffing. It's an oddly sort of upbeat, up-tempo track. It's got good melodic elements. It's got a good pace. It just really freaking works. And it was amazing. A great way to close out the set. So overall, you've got a real good career-spanning representation. You've got tracks right back from their classic early years with Exhume to Consume and Ruptured Impurulence. You've got fan favourites and essentials from Necroticism with Corporal Jigsaw Quandary and Incarnated Solvent Abuse. Heartwork got a real good representation with opening track Buried Dreams. We've got Heartwork. We've got this Mortal Coil, Death Certificate. Throw in a curveball. Keep on Rotting in the Free World and Tomorrow Belongs to Nobody. And also keeping things relevant, keeping things new. Really kind of embracing the fact that, yeah, they're moving with the times. They're still here. They're still relevant. They're still plodding on. They're still absolutely crushing with Dance of Ixtab or Istab, not sure how you pronounce it. The absolutely delightful Under the Scalpel Blade, which is an absolute ripping track. And Kelly's Meat Emporium. Absolutely superb stuff. So as I say, I was plenty close to the stage, close enough to have caught this little ditty. Well, I say caught, it more came flying from, I believe it was Jeff. However, Jeff and the new guitarist were kind of side by side at this point. If you're looking at the stage, I was to the right hand side, and they pretty much kind of threw picks simultaneously, but I think this came from Jeff. However, I I'm not sure that is, I don't think that's Jeff's signature. I'm wondering if this is maybe sort of old stock, if you like. Probably should do a bit more research, but is that Ben Ash? Not quite sure. Maybe someone can enlighten me. Whose signature is that? But it's certainly Carcass, and it's so cool that I've got a pick from the show. Absolutely lovely. As I say, I was literally standing there, simultaneous kind of throwing of the picks. It just kind of hit me in the chest, and I was down so quickly it nearly hit me in the back of the head, because that is a really lovely little souvenir. I'm going to keep that in very good condition. Keep that somewhere. Not going to do what some people do and put it on a string and wear it as a necklace. I just think that's a really cool little souvenir. So got that. Other souvenirs, of course, a tour t-shirt. Now, this is an interesting one, because I love the fact that this has got the sort of pink logo, giant logo. We've got the artwork, the kind of anatomical heads that has featured throughout their catalogue, really. They've been using sort of medical imagery and horrible, disgusting pictures and artwork throughout. But this is kind of the artwork that was in the background of their tour poster for the Bloody Blighty, I should say. And on the reverse, it has the title again, Carcass, and it has the tour dates. So it got the tour dates. But what really, really blew my mind was the fact that the prices for these shirts were pre-COVID. This was £20. So for a tour t-shirt, that is incredibly reasonable, considering that the last 3 or 4 shows that I have been to, I have not been able to buy a t-shirt because they're £35, £40 a shirt. Now, I do appreciate, of course, the cost of touring and the cost of living crisis and all this sort of stuff. It's incredibly expensive for a band to go on the road. However, because ticket prices have gone up as well, everything else has gone up for everyone else as well. Absolutely, I can't afford a £35 t-shirt. That is not possible when you think you bought the ticket, you're paying for your petrol costs. You know, it's just, that's not going to work. However, £20 for a t-shirt, of course, I want to purchase something and show my support for the band. I want to have a cool souvenir, something to show off, something to remember the show. £20, £25, absolutely. I'll do my bit for the band, do my bit to show my support. For £35, £40, I think I'm probably going to have to reconsider. But they had so much cool stuff. I kind of wish that I'd actually got more as well. So if you do get a chance to catch Carcass before the end of this tour, I think that we've still got a few more dates to go. Bring some extra money with you, because they've got a vast array of really, really, really cool shirts, and it's really, really reasonable prices. So do the decent thing and support Carcass on the road, because they absolutely deserve it. The show was amazing. Absolutely loved it, every bit of it. I was headbanging along like a maniac. It was freaking hot in there, so I was sweating like a pig. It was disgusting. But it was an absolutely amazing show. Bill Steer, Jeff Walker, absolute legends. Of course, the whole band were red hot. Just delivered an absolutely astounding show. If you got a chance, or if you get a chance, grab a ticket, see them before the end of this tour. You will not regret it. Carcass, set list, amazing. So there you have it. There's my thoughts on Carcass at the Norwich Waterfront on Sunday, the 4th of June, 2023. Were you there? What were your thoughts and opinions on that show? Have you caught Carcass anywhere else, or are you going to be seeing Carcass on any of the remaining dates? Let me know. I'm very interested to hear. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. Feel free to like and subscribe, as always. Do take care. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations. And above all, stay heavy.